stars have lost their glitter. The winds grow colder. Suddenly you're older, and all because of the man that got away.
That was great.
Phenomenal.
It sounded really nice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Welcome back to another episode of Showgays Movie Musical Podcast, where we talk about movie musicals. Today, we have captured with our eyeballs the 1954 second iteration remake of A Star Is Born, starring Judy Garland and James Mason.
Truly.
And it was 3 hours long. That's all we'll start by saying.
There was an intermission. There was a title card that said intermission.
When intermission came up, I thought of the Meryl Streep moment in Death Becomes Her and said, now an intermission?
Yes. Truly. That wasn't the end?
That wasn't the end.
I'm taking off a few days this weekend to go on a little trip to San Antonio.
Nice.
So,
To Texas.
yeah, to Texas.
What's there? What's in Texas?
Just going on a trip. Just having
Just
fun.
to see the sights and sounds.
No
Going to
reproductive
see the
rights.
Alamo.
That's what's going on in
I
Texas.
know, I know that, and I've made a joke to everybody who's brought it up and said, I don't think I'm going to need an abortion in the 4 days I'm going to be there. Let's hope that's not going to happen.
Listen, you never know.
You
never say never.
Never say never.
Molly, it's good to see you as always.
Yeah,
Such a
good to
pleasure
see
to have
you.
you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, you're welcome. It's just something new I'm trying.
Oh, I like
Sincerity.
it. Yeah.
RJ.
Charm.
Mutual, I'm
Mutual, I'm sure.
Okay. RJ, do you have anything to share with the listeners of the pod?
Do I?
Do you?
I don't think so.
Okay, I was just asking. Molly, do you have anything you want to share? Any tidbits about your life other than going to San Antonio?
Yeah.
That was the tidbit.
That's the thing I'm most excited about right now.
Great.
That's my bud in a game of Rosebud Thorn.
Great.
Oh.
Remember that?
Oh.
I only know of Rose and Thorn.
I only know Roses and Thorns.
Bud.
What's Bud? Who's Bud?
Bud is something in the future you're excited about.
Oh, that's
so
your bud.
So for instance, let's just say hypothetically I had to help a kid clean up after pooping her pants. Like that would be my thorn
That's your
today.
thorn. Yeah.
And
Not ideal.
my
Just a hypothetical.
rose, my rose would be like
Doing this podcast, obviously.
doing this podcast recording. And then my bud, which is in the future, is going to San Antonio this weekend.
So then you do one.
Okay. My rose today. I went to the gym. I felt good about that.
Nice.
I started a new trainer. So I feel way more taken care of and like actually have a purpose and a goal than my last one, who was kind of like, what do you want to do today? I was like, you tell me.
Right. That's why I hired you. Yeah.
That's why I hired you. My thorn.
Friedrich's tip-tapping around.
Friedrich is tip-tapping around. He's kind of, he's still getting the lay of the land here. He's laying down in the bed now. So I think he just needs more time to chill. But my bud is that we're finally in spring. So I would like to take him on longer walks. So that way, I think he just has a lot.
You tucker him out.
I think he's got some pent up kind of energy that needs to be expressed.
Nice. Nothing better than a long walk with your dog.
Yeah.
My rose is we have finally turned over our keys from our last apartment, so we're officially out of there.
Yeah.
My thorn is it's spring market for real estate, so I am extremely busy all of the time lately, which is great, and also just a lot. And then I would say my bud is just that I am really looking forward to this May trip to the Philippines. So I am as the days get longer. I'm getting excited.
Molly, you're going to be due for a little Judy.
Yeah, you got to pull one out later.
Pull one out
Oh, God,
in the
okay.
episode. So
Only when you
that's your
least
challenge.
expect it. Okay.
Perfect. Okay, RJ, this week you have the challenge of summarizing the plot of 1954's A Star Is Born in a minute or less. And your time starts now.
Star Norman Maine is a known drunk in Hollywood and enters a benefit drunk, almost publicly humiliating himself in front of a crowd, only to be saved by a band singer, Esther Blodgett, on stage. Later, he finds Esther singing after hours and discovers her beautiful voice and convinces her to leave the band and stay in Hollywood with his influence for a career. She stays, but ends up having to grind as a lowly company member as Maine films Out at Sea and getting a new stage name, Vicky Lester. When he finally returns, he convinces Oliver Niles, the studio head, to cast her in a musical movie where it catapults her to stardom. In her success, she falls in love with Maine and they marry, but as Lester's career skyrockets, Maine's declines and his contract is bought up by the studio to end his career. In a drunk display of embarrassment, he interrupts Lester in her Oscar acceptance speech by saying he is unemployed. He goes to a sanitarium to get sober, only to fall off the wagon as he's reminded that public opinion about him hasn't changed. He becomes a recluse, gets arrested on a drunk charge, and Lester pleads with the judge to have him come home. Maine then accepts what he has done to himself and drowns himself, leaving Lester a widow, but still shows her pride and love for him by introducing herself in her first public appearance as Mrs. Norman Maine.
Great. You got it. That might be my favorite summary you've ever done, RJ.
Thank you.
I have really no notes other than drunk in Hollywood enters a benefit drunk.
But yes, I was like, I said drunk twice.
But yeah, it was great. Good job.
Thank you. There were like parts that I was like, I didn't there were a lot of parts of the story that I thought was going to develop into something that really didn't. Like at the beginning of the show, there was like a Hollywood starlet that was like everyone was looking at. And they were like, where's Norman Maine? Where's Norman Maine? That I was like, is she like a lover? But she is kind of just like to show that this is like glitz and glamorous Hollywood.
I think she is his girlfriend at the beginning.
At the top? Okay.
Yeah. And then he just leaves her for Esther.
Yeah.
It's early on. It's very clear that he cycles through girls often, as is displayed in the club when the club owner is offering up the different.
Yes. And I didn't get to talk about the like PR guy of the studio.
Libby.
Because he keeps being like, I always have to cover for him. And then at the end, he's the reason why he gets off the wagon, because he basically punches him and says like, you'll always be a drunk. I hate
the blows.
Yeah.
You also didn't mention Danny, their like assistant who's on their side, ? I think that's a discussion point potentially.
Oh, that's right. Danny, who is the
gay friend. Let's say it. Gay friend.
But he's like in the band that Esther leaves. And then later when she becomes a star, becomes like an assist, just becomes affiliated with her once again.
Yeah.
RJ, since you gave us quite the summary, I'd love you must be familiar with A Star Is Born. I'd love to hear you tell us your relationship to this piece.
So I only know of the Gaga Star Is Born. So throughout we did watch it on in the theaters. And so like throughout the movie, I was kind of like keeping track of all the parallels of like, what did they kind of modernize and adapt into the Gaga Bradley Cooper venture. I also knew of The Man That Got Away. I've just a gay man who watches musical theater, I've seen that clip of her sing that amazing song.
Crazy. I've never seen that played at Sidetrack.
Oh yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Never ever.
I think I've just like, I want to say in the many, gay nights I have of just clicking divas sing musical theater numbers, I think I got to a Judy era.
Judy.
And just watched like what her famous performances are. And this was the one that I saw from this performance. And then I knew that Barbra Streisand like directed, wrote, and starred. Maybe just directed and
She just starred. She did not direct.
In A Star Is Born of her own in the 70s.
With Chris Christopherson.
That was like rock.
Yeah, I think it's like rock
and roll.
folk. Yeah. 70s rock.
But I knew that it was like, okay, this is like a story that gets told multiple times. But the Gaga version was the one that I was like, okay, that's when I learned kind of like the plot points.
Yes.
It is beats.
There
was also a 1937 version, right? This one is also a remake.
True.
Yeah.
Correct.
There have been 4.
Yeah. Molly? Star Is Born?
I knew that there were many versions of this movie and I had never seen any of them.
Great. Did you know any of the basic plot?
I figured a star would be born. I mean,
sure.
I figured it was a movie about a person becoming famous. That was as much information as I had.
Yeah.
So you did not know the context of the fact that he
It's when one door closes.
Yep, that's
when one door, the other tunnel opens.
The other, yes.
Right. Yeah.
That clap.
Another window
love
starts.
that phrase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't know he dies?
No. So he dies in every version. Is that? I wasn't sure if that was
I believe
specific
so.
to
Yes.
this. Okay.
Yep.
And does he always take his own life?
Yes.
That is a very big part of it.
Okay.
So I had only
how very Javert of him.
I had also only seen. Well, we're going to talk about the Greek tragedy aspect of this film, but
totally.
I had only seen the Gaga version with RJ. I knew that this was the remake, and I knew of the Barbara version, but I had never seen either of them, so it was pretty much the same as RJ.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. Sorry, I thought I had more to say, but I didn't. Haha. So let's talk about the history of this piece. So the first real version is actually not A Star is Born 1937. It's a movie called What Price Hollywood?
Huh.
It's a question. What price Hollywood?
Question mark. Is a 1932 American pre-code drama film directed by George Cukor, who directs this A Star is Born that we just watched.
Oh.
And it stars Constance Bennett and Lowell Sherman. So it's a very similar energy. It is specifically just acting.
Okay.
She's a waitress. He meets her. He like helps her on her rise to fame. And then he's like, his career's on a decline. He doesn't get romantically involved with her so that she does not get sucked into his downward spiral. Mm-hmm. She ends up marrying another guy, a polo player. But he's like he's like jealous of her career as well. And then, there's, the same situation happens where Max is the main guy in that one. He is arrested for drunk driving. She posts bail for him. She takes him home. He wallows in self-pity. And then he kills himself. He shoots himself in the chest. So
it's shocking. I know you said it was pre-code, but it's still shocking to me that this would be content in a movie in the 30s. It feels like we weren't putting that kind of thing on film at that time.
I know.
Yeah.
So that's 1932. And then we get A Star is Born 1937.
Oh, quick
turnaround. Mm-hmm. This is an American Technicolor film directed by David O. Selznick. If you're ever interested, there is a podcast called what's the one with
check.
Nope. What's the one where she talks about old Hollywood?
Karina Longworth.
Fuck.
Oh my God.
You must remember this.
You must remember this. A kiss is just a kiss.
Karina Longworth, who actually is the partner of the guy who
did Rogue One.
Who did the second
Star Wars. The second new Star Wars.
Who
Knives Out.
Rian Johnson.
Oh.
Okay. I'm going to start the whole thing over.
Okay.
Karina Longworth has a podcast called You Must Remember This. Her partner is Rian Johnson. She is like
old
Hollywood historian.
Yes.
And she goes very in depth. She has podcast series about specific things. She had like a series on blondes. She did people who killed themselves with the Hollywood sign.
Yeah.
She's done like a bunch of them. It's so great. She's so well versed on the subject and like really presents it in like a really compelling way. She did the Black Dahlia murder. She did like she's done a lot of stuff. So I know the name David O. Selznick only because I used to listen to her podcast and he would come up so often because he was like a huge director in like the 30s, 40s. Anyway, it starred Janet Gaynor in her only Technicolor film and Frederick March in his Technicolor debut. This movie was nominated. It was the first Technicolor film nominated for Best Picture.
Hold on.
1937 version.
Frederick March?
Yes. Fredric.
I believe he went to the University of Wisconsin. We had a theater named the Frederick March Theater.
Oh.
Yeah, from Racine, Wisconsin.
He's from Racine.
Yeah. So while I was there, they renamed the theater because he was part of an organization at the time that he was there or early that I think was called the Ku Klux Klan. But then it seems to have been an unrelated organization. So there was a lot of debate. They took his name off the theater and there was a lot of debate about whether that was the right decision because I think it was that, but he was part of some group that had a name that is now associated with a hate group.
March was briefly a member of an interfraternity society composed of leading students formed at the University of Wisconsin-Madison in 1919 and 1920 named the Ku Klux Klan, which is not believed to have been affiliated with the notorious organization of that name. In actuality, March was an outspoken proponent of the civil rights movement for 5 decades and worked closely with the NAACP.
Yes. So there was a lot of controversy about whether it was justified to take his name off of the theater.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So anyway, in the 1937 version, it basically follows pretty similarly, except it's not a musical. It's just a film.
But it is. She's a singer. It's music.
No, she's just an actress.
Okay.
But it's pretty much beat for beat the same. And this is the one. This is the first one where he walks into the ocean to be done.
Okay.
Let's say that. To unalive himself.
TikTok.
If we're on TikTok.
If you're on TikTok.
We're not. Thank goodness there's free speech on podcast apps.
Podcasts.
So that's the 1937 version. This version, Star is Born, 1954. It's directed by George Cukor. Its screenplay is by Moss Hart. Story is by William Wellman and Robert Carson. It's based on the first film. And Dorothy Parker also did some of the screenplay in the first version.
Oh, okay.
Which is interesting. She's a famous American poetess. Produced by Sidney Luft, who famously, how do we know Sidney Luft?
How?
Do you recognize the last name?
Lorna.
Yes.
Lorna's father?
Yes.
Lorna's husband.
Lorna's father. Judy's second husband.
Okay.
Sidney Luft. Okay. Stars Judy Garland as Esther Blodgett / Vicky Lester, James Mason as Norman Maine, Jack Carson as Matt Libby, the PR guy, and Charles Bickford as Oliver Niles, the studio head. The cinematography is by Sam Levitt. It is edited by Fulmer Blangstead. The music is by Ray Heindorf. The score. The production company is by Transcona Enterprises. It is distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures. It was released on September 29th, 1954. Its running time at the premiere was 182 minutes. And then when it went wide release, the general release, it was cut to 154 minutes. And the restoration is at 178 minutes. So,
Molly,
that's that.
Describe the version that you watched. How did you watch it? What app did you use?
So I use Tubi.
Okay.
I watched it on Tubi. I searched for it on my Chromecast and said, do you want to pay for this on YouTube or watch it for free on Tubi? And I said, thank you, Tubi, for your service. I love you.
Yes, absolutely.
And then about 20 minutes into the film, we got to the still pictures and then I had to pause it and I had to Google.
What's going on.
Because I was like, is there a copyright issue with Tubi or is this?
That's a real question you got to ask.
Question.
Right.
We don't know what rights Tubi acquired.
So I feel like maybe if I were to be distributing this film now, I would put a little explanation at the beginning about what's going to happen with the still images so that people don't feel surprised by that.
Yes.
Happening.
The same we rented it on Apple TV.
Okay.
And the same experience happened that we were like, we had to pause and do a quick Google because we were like, I was like, oh, this might be an artistic choice to be like, this movie is about what happened to the star who was born. So it's like a look
tabloidy.
Back. It's like tabloidy. Like we're looking
back. I had that
back.
thought for maybe the first
second.
Like
and then
10
it kept
seconds. And
going.
then I was like, no, that's not what this is.
1954, we weren't that meta yet.
We weren't high concept yet. No. So then we paused.
We should explain to the listeners what exactly we're talking about.
No, it's their homework to watch. They got to watch the movie.
We asked them to do one thing and watch the movie. No, go ahead.
We asked them 2 things to also listen to the podcast.
And we asked 3 things and to email us.
Please email us.
Adam, explain.
So, as I said, the general release of 154 minutes was restored to 178 minutes in the 70s, 80s. And it was compiled. Someone in the archives at Warner Brothers found the full the full original 3-hour soundtrack reel that they would use that would be synced to the camera. So at the very least, they had the full audio of the original film to base this off of. And then they found other parts and pieces. They reached out to people that they knew had not real, unofficial versions. They found people who had pirated different versions.
Makeup tutorial videos.
Yes,
on
basically,
YouTube?
yeah. Original makeup tutorial videos where it was like the full A Star Is Born.
They took they took a can home of
Yes. So, and we're able to stitch most of it together. Really, going from 154 to 178 minutes, that's 24 minutes extra worth. And really, the still photographs is probably 5 to 7 minutes of it. It's not 24 minutes. It happens a bunch.
Oh.
It feels like it's long because
I can tell you that there are 2 musical sequences that we watched fully that were re-added back into the film, which is the not Put on a Happy Face. Sorry, wrong musical. What is that song called? Lose That Long Face, which is the one where she's the freckles.
Which I really did, as we were in just the intro part, think, is this going to turn into Put on a Happy Face? Because it felt like maybe this was the introduction to that song. Yeah.
So that one was re-added, and there was a portion of the trunk sequence, the one where it's like her big
story.
Oh, well,
story in the movie that we're watching.
Yeah.
That they found.
Literally, Molly the entire time was like, this is literally the end of oh my god. Singing in the Rain.
Okay, I was going to say such a better
Singing
joke.
in the Rain.
You remember.
I know.
It was like Inception with a musical number. Like the layers
it was
going
yes.
into yet another
we were watching a movie of the
sequence.
characters watching the movie that they had filmed, and she was also retelling the story in a montage sequence of her life.
Yeah.
It was a hat on a hat on a hat.
We were doing that in the 50s, as it turns out. Yeah.
We were.
And then there is the proposal sequence that happens in the studio, like the recording studio. That was also added. That was
talk about that.
And then there were a couple others. There were like
negging.
multiple scenes that they had actually found full versions of. There is like a large chunk in the first like act of the film that's like stitched together from stills, which is interesting. It's a production
stills to suggest what approximately the camera would have been looking at to go with the audio.
Yes, correct.
There's literally a sequence where it's like a picture of Judy Garland in an apartment, and then like a shot of a telephone ringing, and then like a picture of her again, and then like she goes and gets some shampoo out of a jar. Like these are just images.
Yes.
Slideshow.
Yeah.
Production stills.
Slideshow of a storyboard of like, we see her, we see the phone, we see her again, we see her wash her hair. Like that is what it is.
Okay, so that's what you'll see if you go and search for this movie now. That is the version you will see. The budget of this movie was $5 million. It was one of the most expensive movies ever made at this point, and its box office was only $6 million, and that does include rentals. So it's like probably $6 million was not even like at the time how much money the movie made.
I thought that it was a success. No.
So it would have been, except a lot of people, and we'll say it, gays. Had heard how much of the film that they had cut and started like blasting it, and like real big Judy Garland fans were like, well, then we're not going to support this film because this is like her chance to win an Oscar, of which she was nominated for. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but we'll also talk about other reasons that it might not have been.
And then they threw the brick at Stonewall?
And because of this movie, we have gay rights.
Okay.
And no one did die. Just to be clear, no one died at Stonewall.
Just to be clear, Derek Barry, no one died at Stonewall.
Okay. Judy Garland, huge. This is our third film with Miss Garland. We have watched in the past before Molly. We watched obviously The Wizard of Oz, and then we watched Maybe in St. Louis. This is number 3. This was billed as Judy Garland's comeback. It was her first film since she had left MGM in 1950. So she had been off the screen for 4 years. So people were raring to get her back. America's little sister.
And let me say this. Did you all look up how old she was when they made this?
No, I did not.
No, I was trying to do the math in my head, but I did not.
Do you want to guess based on her appearance in this film?
I feel like this is a trick question.
It's going to be a trick question.
I would say she looks like she's like 37.
Yeah.
Okay. She's 32. She is the same age that I am.
Yes,
and look,
I am.
And Judy Garland is a beautiful woman, but I think that one can see the effect that drugs have on your body based on the visible signs of aging on her face in comparison to people that I know who are 32 years old.
Yes.
Well, also people drink water nowadays.
People drink water,
which is huge.
Yeah.
Huge for the community, the water community.
Yeah. The human community. Yeah.
The living organism community.
70% of your body.
We really need to stand with the organism community.
Absolutely.
So Norman Maine was originally supposed to be Cary Grant, but then he turned this down. He also turned this down, Roman Holiday and Sabrina down all at the same time because he wanted to travel more with his wife.
Slay.
So then it's James Mason in this, Roman Holiday is Gregory Peck, and Sabrina is Humphrey Bogart. And it's like, good God, Cary Grant.
Cary.
The roles you were offered by God.
I hope they had a great trip.
Yeah.
They actually were on a hot air balloon that entire time. So he was.
They went around the world.
That's like a nightmare. There are a lot of hot air balloons in San Diego, and I love looking at them, but I would not want to be in one.
Never.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I would do like one that's like 50 feet. Like I don't want to go high. I want to be like a 3-story building up, and then that's as comfortable.
I want to
as
just
be.
look at that. I feel like hot air balloons are a better experience from the ground. It's more fun to just look at them. Yeah.
I can't be like free roaming in the sky. Do you know what I mean? Like,
You are crazy. I hate you, RJ. RJ, we will watch shows and people will like do the
bungee
paragliding.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
And he will fully be like, I could totally do that. And I'm like, you are out of your mind. You hate anything where you're not connected to the ground.
Is paragliding where you go off of a cliff, or is it where
you're like running at a cliff and then woo?
Okay, yeah, that I would not do. I would do the thing where you're
he's
like
fully like,
boat.
Easy.
Oh, the boat one, yeah.
The boat one I would do.
How would you not do the boat one? The boat one, if you fall, you just land in water.
That's true.
Because you're tethered in the boat one.
And you're tethered.
That's the really appealing part, yeah.
And then Humphrey Bogart or Sinatra were offered as options, but Jack Warner declined both those and they ended up with James Mason. It was actually a really huge thing to try to find anyone. I'm going to read you the list of all these men that said no because the problem with this role is that it's a has-been actor. And so no one was like, I want to take on the role of a has-been actor. So it was directed by Humphrey Bogart, Marlon Brando, Montgomery Clift, Gary Cooper, Henry Fonda, Errol Flynn, Cary Grant, Ray Milland, Gregory Peck, Tyrone Power, Frank Sinatra, James Stewart, and Robert Taylor.
Wow.
That's a lot. A real who's who.
Remind me again the name of the guy who does do it.
James Mason.
I don't think I've ever seen a movie with him in it before. And I really enjoyed it. And I think, it sounds like kind of happenstance that he was the person in the film. He, I think, has really good chemistry with Judy Garland. So I feel like it worked out very well.
They became such good friends after this film that he actually gave the eulogy at her funeral.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Oh my God, that's this do-re-mi.
Yeah. I mean, I really think, I know that I'm kind of spoiling my opinion of it a little bit, but like their clear connection with each other really sold me on what is such a toxic love story that you just want to be like, well, this is just awful. And I just see that it's awful. But there's that little bit that you're like, oh, but I kind of am rooting for them. And the thing that really sold it for me was the gentle ways that they would just touch each other in this,
I know.
This way that just like really sold the idea of like, these people just have an attraction and a desire to be around each other, of like, he would just like put his arm around her shoulder, like things like that just showed this like draw to one another. And again, in a way that kind of surprised me for the 50s, that it wasn't anything crass, right? But it still was like, oh, like, did we let people be this affectionate on film in the 50s? I feel like, you know, you're not allowed to. So that was, I thought, really strong.
Yeah, we'll talk about, we'll discuss that for sure.
Yeah.
The filming of this film, now normally films like at most take place like 3 months, like it's a 3-month shoot or whatever.
Yeah.
The filming of this film took place from October 1953 to July 1954.
Whoa.
Wow.
And it premiered in 54, right?
And premiered in 54. And I will tell you, it is because of Judy Garland.
Yeah.
Mostly.
It is. I mean, talk about the meta element of what this is about.
What this movie is about. And it's not her character going through it, but she's the one who's living the experience in real time.
A movie where it's like a bunch of executives yelling into phones about like, you can't keep delaying this movie. It's going to cost me all this money because this guy has a substance abuse problem. I wonder what it was like for her to have the experience of filming this. Yeah.
There was like a bunch of problems. Obviously, like she kept getting sick. She would like miss shoots. And then they ended up doing the entire From a Trunk. I can't remember what that song is called.
I was born of a trunk in the world.
Born in the trunk of the world or whatever. Born in a trunk. They did that entire sequence. They shot it at night because she just like she was a night person. She was always up at night, but it was like during the days when she like would like fall asleep and stuff. And because of it, it added to the budget because then obviously they were all third shift. All the unions had to work night shifts and blah, blah, blah. It was very interesting. She also was like, had huge weight issues. Like she kept fluctuating her weight, and so she wasn't consistent. So then the first costume designer had to leave because she had to keep redesigning the costumes, and it was very frustrating. So they brought someone who could like actually do that consistently. Now I will say 1954 weight fluctuation was probably 5 to 7 pounds. That's my guess of what weight fluctuation would be at that time, which is very frustrating. But also clothes were not as stretchy as they are now. So it would be more frustrating to be like, Absolutely. I have to recut this wool skirt every 3 days.
It also is like worth pointing out, like you said that her MGM contract ended in 50. And then I did a little bit of research on her biography. It sounds like that was like kind of a low point. And then she like went through some rehab stuff and everything. So like there were all these delays, but this was like her, I'm back to being healthy level.
Yes.
Too.
Yeah. It's so sad when you look at like her full life. It's just, she was so nuts at some
It's interesting too, what you said about like her being awake at night. I feel like that could totally just be like a substance abuse side effect, but I also wonder if she had like a genuine sleep disorder that was impacting.
Oh, totally.
It could have been causing some of her need to use things like stimulants, right? So like just people's lack of knowledge about things like that in the 50s, I think probably made a lot of issues like that worse.
Yeah. George Cukor had a lot of frustrations with Judy Garland, but it was also his first musical that he shot, which is funny because we actually have talked about George Cukor on this podcast before because he directed My Fair Lady 10 years later in 1964. That goes on. He wins Best Director for it. So this is his first little taste of what it is like to direct a musical. And Judy did 27 takes of The Man Who Got Away over a period of 3 days. And allegedly, to George Cukor's amazement, she would belt it out every single time, refusing to lip sync. And that's a pro. Okay. The only other things that are interesting, I'll talk about that in a second. The moment where Esther's widow's veil is ripped from her face by a fan at a funeral, which is a insane sequence in this film.
Yeah.
And in a moment where I was like, this is a little heavy. Like no one's doing this in real life. Was imitated in real life in 1958. During the graveside service for her husband, Mike Todd, Elizabeth Taylor was traumatized when one of her fans thoughtlessly tore the widow's veil from Taylor's face. This happened 4 years later. Wow. Now, it could have been inspired by this film.
I guess. We can't say for sure it wasn't. But
it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a very dramatic moment in this film. It's real wild. And then let's talk about the Oscars. So this movie was nominated for 6 Academy Awards. It was nominated for Best Song, The Man That Got Away, Best Scoring of a Musical Picture, Best Costume Design Color, Best Art Direction Color, Best Actress for Judy Garland, and Best Actor for James Mason. Judy and James had both won the Golden Globe for this film just a couple months prior. They did not win the Oscar. And I'm going to read... Did I put it in here?
At the top.
Did I not put it in?
Oscar down?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Okay. When the Oscar... Okay, so everybody thought Judy was going to win. When the Oscar for Best Actress went to Grace Kelly instead of Judy Garland, Groucho Marx sent Judy a telegram reading, "Dear Judy, this is the biggest robbery since Brinks," referencing the trucks, the Brinks armed trucks. Hedda Hopper reported that only 6 votes separated the two, resulting in the closest win up to that point in Oscars history.
Whoa.
Wow.
Hedda Hopper being a huge gossip columnist for Hollywood at the time. So I thought that was very interesting. And this, because she did not win, it really put Judy back in a very low place, unfortunately.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I do think she gives an incredible... We will get to it, but it is an incredible tour de force performance. Even if you were to remove all of her musical numbers, it's still an incredible dramatic performance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And James Mason is nothing to be played with. He also has a moment in this movie that broke my heart, shattered into a million pieces. But Judy is, it's incredible. She's incredible. The only other thing I wanted to say was that the reason they had cut... So the movie was originally 196 minutes at the first screening, and then George Cukor trimmed it down to 182 for the premiere. And then WB went behind his back and cut it without his consent to 154. And they only did it because they were worried about how many times it could play in theaters to get more money.
Yeah.
It boiled down to capitalism.
Well, that's what studios are for.
Great. So that's what happened there. Okay. That's really all I have. Let's talk about the movie.
Let's do it.
I've not seen any of the other films nominated for Best Actress this year.
Sure.
It is highway robbery that Judy Garland did not win this Oscar.
Look it up. Just look it up real quick.
I know Grace Kelly won.
Yeah.
And
then she became a princess. So
and we know that she became a princess. So didn't she already win by that? You know what I mean?
She didn't need this.
Grace Kelly for The Country Girl, Dorothy Dandridge for Carmen Jones, Audrey Hepburn in Sabrina, and Jane Wyman in Magnificent Obsession. And then Judy in A Star Is Born.
I've never seen The Country Girl. I think I've heard of it only because it's what Grace Kelly won an Oscar for.
Yeah,
I've seen
it's her
Sabrina,
only Oscar, I believe.
Yeah, I've seen Sabrina, but I wouldn't. No way I would put that above this.
No, it's not. And it's not Audrey's best performance either. She's very good in it. She's very charming, but it's written to be very charming.
Yeah.
I just think this is, I already basically said this, but like, Judy is not an actress that I'm very familiar with in all of her, stuff. And so much of her stuff is like when she was really young, obviously like her and Mickey Rooney's like all their movies they made together when she was like in her teens. So obviously she wasn't doing like powerhouse acting at that point. I just was like blown away by, and I really like that they, for the restoration, kept this in the sequence where she is like dressed as a clown, but has to give that like speech where she's like, I hate him
and I hate myself for hating him.
It's so deeply sad because there is like what feels like a real understanding I think she has of like what this is that really comes out, especially in that sequence of like, you can feel her saying, I hate myself for when I have to do this. Yeah. And it's so heartbreaking because we all know, we can only watch it with 2024 lens on and like know what happens to her life. And it's like, it itself is its own like Greek tragedy, just walking toward the final moments of her own life, really, and kind of foreshadowing what's going to happen. Obviously, she didn't commit suicide, but like, I don't know, an overdose isn't like, it's just, the whole thing is so incredibly sad. But she is so good in this movie, and I was so happy that it wasn't just gay people being like, well, of course Judy's great. Like, she's actually very good in this movie.
Adam doesn't respect gay people's opinions.
Not often, no. Molly, what did you've talked to a little bit about it. What did you think of this relationship? It's one for the ages, right?
Okay. I wish it was a movie that made me wish that there weren't all the historic things about relations between men and women specifically. Obviously I wish that a lot, but like, the complexity, if we could remove the gender from it and just look at the complexity of this relationship between two people, it's really interesting. Right. But you can't remove the gender from it because what is so upsetting to him is the fact that it is his wife that becomes the star and the higher earner, right? Like that is when he punches Libby, it's not about your wife is more famous than you are. It's when he says something about like, well, isn't your wife earning?
Yes, you rely on your wife.
Spending your wife's money or something like that. And that's the greatest insult that he can't stand. Because I think that I've never been famous, obviously, but like definitely all the portrayals of fame make it.
This podcast has made us famous, Molly. Tens of people listen to this.
Tens of people listening. But like, it's always portrayed as like this thing that you get almost addicted to, but can't last forever kind of by definition. And so everybody has to deal with the come down from fame. And I think that's really interesting. And I wish that somehow we could live in a world where like all the stuff about men and women didn't exist so that we could really just focus on that part of it. Because what I also didn't like, I liked the complexity of like, she's so willing to give everything up for him and he's so devastated to hear what she would give up for him that's what drives him to suicide. Right. But then to end, it's called A Star Is Born, and the star is referring to Judy because it's about the one that's being born, not the one that's dying, right? And then it ends with her introducing herself as Mrs. Norman Maine. And so it's like, the point of the movie is like, ultimately the man's the only one that matters in this equation. Like, it's like, I get it, but I also hate it at the same time.
Yeah.
So you have never seen the Gaga Cooper version?
Seen the Gaga. I don't know how to
So, I'm curious to see what you thought. Yeah. I had a very different take, not very different take, but I had much softer take on this film.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because Gaga Cooper, that version, the 2017 version, 2018, that pushes it even more into the like, they're like mean to each other in that movie. And it's a very, they made that relationship one of those very classic, like great times, bad times relationships where it's like the highs are high and the lows are so low. There is a crazy sequence where she's in a bathtub and he like tells her she's like ugly and fat. And it's like, it's very interesting. So I was looking forward to watching this movie because I really wanted to see it, obviously. But that was the part that I was hesitant about, is like, I hated in that movie how it became like he resented her and like made her out to be like a bad guy.
Yeah.
And really in this movie, there is definitely gender stuff at play here for sure. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but it is not
never
to
takes it
her.
out on her.
He really is very kind to her and still supportive. And like the thing that breaks his heart is that she is going to give up her career to take care of him.
Yeah.
And in the Bradley Cooper one, he just decides to kill himself. There is no like, there's not this like dramatic moment where he overhears a conversation or anything. He just is like, I can't do this anymore.
It's more about the pride.
And hangs himself in the garage, and the dog finds him, by the way. You would freak out. But spoiler alert, sorry for that movie, but it's basically beat for beat.
Yeah, it's this movie.
So I was much more, I don't want to say charmed by this film because it is so intensely sad.
Yeah.
But I thought there were way more moments of levity that this film had too in comparison. And while it obviously is a melodrama and borders on Greek tragedy, and we have to talk about it because it's so clear. Yeah. That I still was like, I was able to see, like, and especially in the scenes that I think that like they cut, that they kind of had to like stitch together from whatever. There were so many moments where they were like sweet and funny and nice to each other that I was like,
still liked each other.
Thank God.
It's still a relationship.
They liked each other. That is definitely true. I wonder too how much of this might be informed by the fact that it was Judy Garland and she really struggled with addiction, and so there might have been more sensitivity to that.
Right.
That it really feels like the addiction is almost an outside problem that they are trying to solve together as a couple rather than his fault situation. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it really feels like both of them hate the addiction and are trying to figure out how to work together to deal with it in a way rather than him just becoming mean because of it.
That scene when she goes to the court and like pleads for him is so like moving because it's so like raw. I mean, you just can't help but feel bad for her. And like,
and knowing that like, these are things that she probably tells herself all the time, you know, like I'm gonna get through it. Like we just need another
It's a
chance.
movie that spends the entire time talking about how bad addiction is. And I can't even imagine being Judy Garland on the set of this film. Like
struggling through it.
It's so crazy. And of course, I don't think it was the conversation would have been the same in her own life, right? Like it was a little different, but it's very good. I really liked this movie.
And the way that when he comes in, he ruins her whole Oscars moment. And I'm just going to cry and it's going to make me cry. She just stands there with such dignity. I know. The dress, the way that it is on the steps. Oh my God. I die. And then when he's done, she just kind of like puts an arm around him and walks him back. It's slowly.
So tender.
It's so tender.
And it is I'm going to spoil right now. If you've not seen the Gaga Cooper version, I'm going to tell you what happens in that. So in the Barbara version, they switch it to their music stars. It's musicians. Yeah. So that's more what the Gaga one is following. But she wins a Grammy. And the whole thing about their relationship, by the way, it's not, they have made specifically the dynamic. He is like a true artist and she is like a pop star. And so the problem is like the falsity or the falseness.
Who's creating actual art that deserves the stardom.
Okay.
Right. So, but there is a moment that's replicated in this film where there's like the billboard, which is very funny. So there is a moment in the Gaga Cooper version where she wins a Grammy. It's the 1-to-1 for the Oscars. Yeah. She gets up on stage. He comes in. He is drunk, just like in this film. He comes up on the stage, belligerent. Like it's so bad. And he pisses his pants on stage, like pees his pants. And she like helps him off stage. And that is so much worse. In this one, he like accidentally hits her.
Yeah.
And I will
Like,
say it's weird to see like it, but it is very purposefully, like they very clearly make it. He accidentally hits her.
He's gesturing and he doesn't realize she's walked up behind him. And it's very sad. He like he knows it immediately as soon as it happens.
Like, it looks like he's about to cry.
And in the Gaga Cooper one, he is just like he's so gone. He doesn't even know. It's so uncomfortable. And this is obviously also equally uncomfortable. Everybody gets really quiet in the Oscars.
There's like a sadness for it. You see him walk up there and everyone knows like, oh no.
Right.
Like even from the people that are in the room.
There is a grotesqueness in the current one that I was like, ugh, and I was glad I didn't have to watch.
It almost feels like they were looking at the original or the 50s scene and were like, how do we take it further? How do we make it more extreme?
Yeah.
Rather than like, okay, like, yeah, I guess he can piss his pants, but like, does that really add to the scene? You know?
Yeah. I mean, in the whole movie as like a piece, I think it's done really well and it's all so extreme
because
that
it's
they all match.
Yeah, exactly.
But, I was happy that this movie was not that extreme because
there's
it was
just
like
so much more heart,
a little more interior.
And I think you explain it well of they are both trying to tackle it together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so sweet.
They're so willing to do this as a unit.
Mm-hmm.
They're not in competition with each other, which is like kind of what the whole Gaga Cooper one was. So I was like, I was glad that wasn't the dynamic of this film because actors and actresses kind of aren't. That it's weird. Like in a musician scene, it makes sense because you're both like musicians and there's not like, it's not the same like as actors and actresses because there's roles versus like just music in general. So what did you think? What were your general?
I think it's very similar. I think because I had the Gaga Bradley Cooper one in my mind, they really do. There's resentment to one another. There's judgment of like your art versus mine. Mm-hmm. It's like he was Willie Nelson and like, or like not even Ring of Fire. He was like a Johnny Cash, and like she is like Kesha, like but it didn't start that way. He discovers her as like a musician in like the bars in New York, and she like writes these songs, and they're so emotional. So it starts that way, but as the stardom rises, she becomes more pop.
He's like a true like singer-songwriter. He's like a
real purist,
and she becomes produced.
And then because of that, like, that judgment comes in that I was really scared to also see it here, but it really don't. I mean, the fact that he even is like, I think you're so talented that you deserve to be in the studio. And like, even with all the grind in the beginning of like, he had to be away. So she was kind of like lost. There was still something that compelled her obviously to like do it and try it, that he was like, you got to do it. You got to try it. And I think here it's like, there's so much more like promise and hope and love that she is a true star that needs to be heard.
There's also, so it was one of the things, or like a major plot beat of the still images is this whole like, so they have this like wild night where he meets her and kind of falls in love and is like, wow, you should be a star and don't go with your band to San Francisco tomorrow, stay here and like try to make it as an actress. And then he doesn't know where she lives and doesn't know how to contact her, which is actually hilarious. It made me think if there was like an SNL skit called like The Meet Cute, where it's like two people running into each other and being like, wow, do you want to have dinner tonight? And being like, yeah. And then they're like,
and they just have no idea.
Plans.
Like, what's your name? Where are we meeting? What time? Like what, what's the plan for this? So it was like somebody actually playing that out fully in a movie, which was great. And then, but what's also wonderful about keeping that whole sequence is that then there's this period of time where he told her all this stuff and then doesn't come back. And then she's like, okay, I'm still going to try to make it as an actress. And she says on the phone, like, I know he's not here, but he showed me the way, which is a little bit crazy. Like, he didn't give you any specifics. He just told you should try.
He just told you should do it. Yeah.
Yeah. He just told you should, but he didn't actually show you the way at all. But I do like the idea that like, actually, it's not all just credit to him. All she needed was somebody to say, take the chance.
Yeah.
And then she had the gumption to like make good on it. Now he does ultimately get her signed to the studio, right? Like, I don't think she would have had the break that she had without him.
Right.
But I like that gives a little bit more agency to her character rather than it just being a story of her like following wherever he pointed her. Like, she shows in that section of the movie, like, I had this commitment and I worked for it. Yeah. That's not just all credit to my husband or eventual husband. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that he says his whole thing is like, she tells him her whole dream. And then he's like, your dreams just need to be bigger. I liked that aspect of it, that it's not that she didn't have an idea of what she wanted to do. Like, she does have an idea, but he's just like, you're so much better than even what you're dreaming of right now. I thought that was cool. There was one part of this movie, and it was in the scene where they're recording and they catch the proposal. Yes. And she records her bit. She comes down and sits down next to him. It's a really cool sequence because we see them record their intimate conversation, but we can't hear it. And then on the playback is when everyone in the room hears it. I thought it was a very interesting idea of a scene because it's an interesting
idea. I agree. Yes. Artistically interesting.
So, artistically interesting. Yeah. Because you get to like watch it twice, and then like the fun would be to go back and then watch like how it matches up with like what their faces are doing. And he does have one line. She comes over and she says, "How did that sound?" And he goes, "It was all right." And that was the first time where I was like, "Oh no, is it going to start where he's going to be like, oh, he doesn't actually like that she's like getting popular." That's the only time in this movie that he gives any acknowledgement that like he's not interested. And I kept waiting for it to happen when he asks her to sing, when she does that whole living room sequence where she like acts out the movie that she's filming. He's like utterly charmed by it. When he asks her after they get married to sing in the like motel and she does, I thought he was going to be like, it doesn't say. I just kept waiting for the turn of him to become a bad guy. And they very specifically do not make him a villain in this movie. He is a victim of fate. And this is where he is a Greek hero, tragic hero.
Greek hero. Yeah, Greek hero.
Yeah. He has lines in this film, and as soon as he said this, I was like, ding, 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 ding.
The classics.
When the classicism, we're back. Where he says like, I have felt like I've always made the wrong decision. Like it's been fated basically. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I see. He's just a guy down on his luck. And it is a movie that is not saying it is a moral failure on his part. Yeah. I mean, there is a bit of like, we wish he would get better, but it never is like he's a bad person.
But he tries. I mean, like he goes
consistently tries. He tries. He's so charming. He's very sweet, but he is just a guy that is just fated to like be stuck in this like loop of alcoholism.
Yeah. And that like it's very clear that his star declining is to do with that, and it's not because of her either. Like it's not like it's separate. Not like it's somehow because she's successful now there's not room for him. Yep. It's that he has this problem and it's causing issues in the studio, and they were going to cut his contract, and they cut his contract that, you know, that doesn't have anything to do with her really. And so I think that the characters are able to understand the circumstances of it is difficult to be together because we're on opposite trajectories. We don't blame each other for it. And an opposite of the last 5 years type of a dynamic.
Yes. Yeah. There was that moment after the living room where she comes back and he like starts basically reading like, oh, these were the messages for you. And like, you could tell she was kind of like a little embarrassed, but he was like, oh, make sure you do this, make sure you do that. Oh, and I'm expecting a package today because I'm supposed to get a script. And then the post comes and it's not a script. It's like a gift for her. And so, and then he kind of like sulks from that. But it's like I convinced myself that it's going to be something that was going to kind of like turn up, you know?
And it feels like in that sequence, it's more the tragedy of him not having anything to do than it is her being successful in the specific way that he's not. Like she could be doing something unrelated. She could be like a surgeon. And he would be happy. He would still read the messages to her. Like that was the thing that I was like, you're still doing this. You like this. You're still taking calls and being like, I'm her husband. What do you want? think he likes taking care of her, but it's sort of a like, is my life just gonna be making us sandwiches kind of a thing?
Yes,
like,
yes. Because the sandwich looked great. Like he wants
great, but like that's not what you want to do for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And I think if there's anyone that seems like a villain in this film, I think it's Libby.
Libby probably is.
Libby, the way the way this guy gives the performance and the way it's kind of like edited and the narrative functions, like he's the one that sends him on that final bender toward death. And so it is, and he is, I guess, I don't want to say justified because I think you still don't need to like treat someone like shit for like this,
but it's
like,
your job. I don't tell you, girl.
But they do give him like an excuses to be like, this is why it's so frustrating.
Yes.
Like
it's like I hate you.
Right. We're not friends. I just worked for you, and it was very frustrating.
I understand why if your job was to like create positive PR and this guy is a drunk and it's causing you a lot of headaches, why you would like grow to resent him. I don't think you should take it out on him in this way.
I don't think you should do
like,
PR.
Like maybe like quit your job. I mean, I do think I was thinking about it as he was saying like, oh, the reporters are going to blame when the two of them get married, they sneak away and they elope in some like remote California town. It's very cute. Yes. They don't want to have a big shindig after the studio heads have already made calls being like, we're going to have this huge blowout wedding and everybody's invited and all this stuff. So Libby is mad. And then he's like, you realize that the reporters are going to blame me for this. And I was like, yeah, it must be actually a miserable job. Like the reporters are like, smarter than you, but like probably smarter than you, care more about going and getting their story. The actors get all the benefit of like being famous and rich and like
it's a
adored.
Total thankless job.
You get nothing to really deal with your pain when you're the PR guy in the middle. You don't have like the freedom or intellectual payoff of being a reporter. You don't have the adoration of being a movie star. You're just like the guy that gets blamed on both sides when things go wrong. And I was like, just quit your job instead of becoming a shell of a human and then blaming this man in the lowest moments of his life.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, but I thought the other thing...
It was the 50s, so people didn't know that you could switch jobs. In the 50s,
they thought you had to do it for the rest of your life.
You got a job, that's it.
You got a job when you were 18, and that's what your job was. So,
yeah. I thought that there was some aspect of this movie, too, that I thought was like kind of like, I don't want to say skewering the Mark Lococo term, skewering. It wasn't like pointedly calling it out, but I do think there were parts of it that were like kind of referencing the shit aspects of like the Hollywood machine.
Yes, the machine. Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting.
That not only makes a person do this, but also how to, the system around it that kind of like doesn't really solve anything. It perpetuates it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting too.
But I did
like that scene when she goes to get her like makeup done for the first time, and it's all these like men who are like,
we gotta fix that nose.
The ears are terrible. Her nose is bad. she has no chin. Blah blah blah. And she feel really bad about herself.
She goes to see him, and he's like, well, let's take all of this off, and she's like, no, because because my face is a problem.
Yeah.
Like this is not.
That made me feel really sad for Judy Garland because wasn't that part of a lot of her issues? Yeah,
totally.
Hyper criticism about her appearance. I mean, I will say I kind of liked the blonde wig. I was kind of vibing with that, but the rest of it was awful.
She looked like a drag
queen. The makeup was so garish. It was wild.
You look like a drag queen performing as Judy Garland.
Yeah, someone doing a Judy Garland impression.
Divine doing Judy Garland.
Girl. I know.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways Libby as the villain, there's like an interpersonal level, but there is also like a system, like a character representing the system about Libby as well. I want to ask the question: is Danny really on her side? Is he in fact a gay friend, or is he a gay friend of me?
So,
are we talking about the speech at the end, or just the whole thing?
I mean, the two speeches that he gives in the beginning when she leaves the band, and then this feels like.
I would like to discuss it holistically, inclusive of the speeches.
I feel like he is like a tough love person of like, I'm the one that's going to tell it like it is, not the like Hollywood mumbo jumbo of like hearing what you want to hear. I'm the real person that
he's a realist. Yeah.
He's a realist.
Yeah.
I got it from the beginning. it felt like it wasn't the right way to to get a grieving widow out of her house.
That speech at the end is wild.
That was the wildest one.
This is the only performance in this movie I do not like.
Okay. Is that moment or that character?
That character. They didn't feel like friends. I think they're supposed to feel like very close friends.
I almost feel like the approach should have been different at the end, where like maybe he could have been like, okay, you know me for this person, but at this point I just want to be like genuine and be like, you have to
actually, I have a confession, because like I tried to really watch this movie and there were parts that really sucked me in, but like it was 3 hours long and I checked it out a little bit.
Totally.
I didn't realize that Danny was the same guy that was in the band at the beginning.
Yeah.
Wow, look at this assistant. This PA.
In my mind, his arc started with him being the one that helped them sneak away for their wedding, and then up to like the guy that talks to her at the end. But I didn't realize that he was also the guy in the band.
Yeah.
Okay.
He is a white man with brown hair to give him
right. Totally. Yes.
Sure.
Okay. Does it change?
With that context.
So I didn't realize that that's how because I thought that he was just like a guy that for some reason was working as their assistant. And that's why I had questions about his motives at the end of like, is this guy really like, he kind of works for the studio too? And like, that's really his
She
aim.
has to get back to work because,
Now that I realize that he knew her from previous to that, I guess that's not probably, although it still could be like, I don't know how he's making money at that point. Like maybe he is still kind of in the pocket of the studio.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like,
it's unclear. I think she
got him a job at the studio.
I think he gets brought in as a musician at the studio because she says he arranged one of the songs. He did the arrangement. Yeah.
So if he works for them, then he at least has some affiliation, some reason to care about the health of the studio overall, right? Yeah. I mean, I guess the question is, how long is it between his death and the scene where he tells her to go on stage? Is it a week? I thought it was a week.
I would have to watch it again. I don't remember if they say a specific time.
Okay.
It felt very soon.
It felt soon. And she is sitting there in her house and he comes in.
I loved this house. I loved this house.
This Malibu house.
This giant screen that appears from the floor.
Close to the ocean. You could not pay me enough money to live that close to the ocean. I would be so stressed that my house is going to just wash into the ocean at any moment.
Yep.
Oh yeah, totally.
1950s pre-knowledge of climate change, sure.
Yeah. The ocean never changed.
Coastal erosion.
Yeah. She's sitting there. She's watching the fire. He comes in. He's like, you're not dressed for this benefit. She's like, I'm not going. And he says, like, you just going to sit here for the rest of your life? And she's like, sure. And I loved that. She was like, I'll sit here as long as I want. And I was like, you go, Judy. But then it's him bullying her, berating her about how she can't just sit here for the rest of her life. And look, yes, eventually there is a point where one has to move on from one's grief. But it felt very 50s of like, you felt sad for 3 days and now we have to put the capital in the machine. Like it was so, it felt very soon. And it felt like I couldn't help but question if he had a reason he needed her to be at the benefit that wasn't for her best interest.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
It felt very, woman, you're hysterical, snap out of it.
Hysteria.
Yeah.
A woman's disease. I thought it was, my assumption is that it is supposed to juxtapose the way Norman loses himself to self-pity and ends up killing himself.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so in order, the thought is maybe like in order for her not to also go down that same path.
Break the curse.
Break the cycle. But it is a jarring scene because I think in 2024 it feels different than I'm sure in 1954 it felt like absolutely
inspiring,
go off. But here it really does feel like a man yelling at a recent widow.
A widow.
Because that's what it is. That's what the scene is. So that's why it feels that way. I like the point he ends up making, which is like you shouldn't throw all of this away, not because anyone wants you to do it, but because like the reason he died, I mean, he doesn't know this, but he essentially knows this. The reason Norman killed himself was so that you could have the career that if you throw it away, then why did he kill himself?
So let me drag you down.
We made some 2024. Whew, girl.
Oh, whoa,
we made some 2024 adjustments, and it was like several months later, and we see that she's had her time to like cocoon and just deal with it.
And it's
clearly time for someone to give her a little kick and say like, okay, like what's going to be next now? I think that the idea of don't just give up on the rest of your life. You have to go and do things again. You have to embrace that he would have wanted you to be up there continuing to share your art with people. I think that can be a really good message. It's just delivered in a weird way in this movie.
Yeah,
totally agree. Yeah.
But I think it's very... Listen, is it always weird that in like the Western idea that women take their husband's name? Yeah. But I do think it's very powerful when she comes out and says, I'm Mrs. Norman Maine. It works. I mean, he, especially in this one more so than I think in the Gaga version, it's powerful because they really have done a good job of not, even though the public has a view of Norman Maine, the audience has like a very, I think, not poor view of him. Unless you have very specific views of suicide, then maybe you have a really poor view of Norman Maine. But I think you are able to watch this movie and be like, he was a good guy. He just was a victim of circumstance and kind of his own inner demons. And I think it's a lovely like tribute to him that she does at the end of the film.
And to your point about suicide, expressing pride in a person who's committed suicide, I mean, probably was pretty
huge.
taboo at the time.
Yeah,
and
totally.
still to some extent, but I think especially at the time, to have it end on her expressing pride in him was a huge deal. I'm
and
sure.
the audience jumping to their feet in applause.
Yeah. Right.
That's the most important part of that moment. Yeah.
Right. This is what I wish Carousel were in terms of a problematic man.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree.
Where I would
for
have
sure.
more sympathy for him and his plight. I mean, it is a funny convention. I did ask
Comic-Con? Is that the convention you're talking about? Because you live in San Diego.
I did ask my partner if he would consider taking my name ever, because I think it's important that if you're going to have that conversation that you say, well, both options should be on the table then.
Yes. Yeah. Slay.
I think, I agree that it works really well here. And especially like we really don't do the like Mrs. and like the first name thing either. But I like that she like said his full name. I think it worked well to use that convention here. Again, I just feel like it's weird to like, it feels like it kind of takes away some of the credit to her to end on like, it's really all about him. Like her point at the end is like, none of this would have happened without him. And it's like, sure, but like, it's not all credited to him. Like he opened the doors for you. And
well, this is the interesting part is like in the classical theory, he is the protagonist.
Sure.
Because he's like the one that the whole kind of thing is about, right? Like he's the one that goes on the journey that's the plot.
But what's his inciting incident?
But she is the one that has like the change. She's the one that actually like grows and changes in this film.
I would argue that she is the protagonist because she has an inciting incident of change at the beginning of being told to pursue the dream. And then she has the change at the end of what are you going to do with the tragedy of his death? I think he is already on the decline when we start, because we see his introduction is already showing up drunk to a show, right? So I think he's just on a continual downward, the same downward slope the whole time. Yeah.
I just mean in terms of like, I'm trying to think of another like Greek hero where it's like, oh yeah, because like I think Oedipus, it's all just like downhill one thing after the other.
That's true.
So in that way, it's like he feels like the main character, but in like in a normal convention of like storytelling, she's like the protagonist. Right. There was like an interview where James Mason later said like he thinks the 37 version is better because they focus more on him than on her. But he does say like Judy's so good in this that why would you not focus on her?
Yeah. Why would you not focus on the star? That's bored.
Right. So I think it's interesting. The one thing that we are circling the drain about is the fact that this is a great movie, but is it a great movie musical?
We are an hour, 17 minutes in, and we haven't talked about a
single song in this film. So I guess we should.
I guess we are a movie musical
because
podcast.
this is I think this was on AFI's top 25 greatest movie musicals of all time. I think it was number 7. So it's allegedly one of the best movie musicals of all time. The question is, do we agree as the arbiters of good movie musicals? Do we agree that it is a good movie
Do we agree
musical?
this is up in the pedestal with Zombies 3 as a great
COM,
musical?
yes.
COM, yes.
Okay, so I guess technically it's a movie with music, right? Like all of the music is diegetic. It is her performing. It is her being asked to sing. It is her in a movie singing. But
there is one part of this movie where I think the score becomes non-diegetic.
Okay.
It is when she is singing at the motel.
But
and then a score comes in.
But he does say
but she is singing, but just like the additional scoring in the background like comes out of nowhere. That's the only time that I was like, wow. Because even when she does the like acting out of the like musical number in the house, she's like doing it to the rehearsal track.
Yeah.
Oh, she played a track.
Yeah.
I think that that's really a technicality. I think it is a musical. Yeah. I think that the music doesn't like advance the plot and characters in the way it would in like a Sondheim musical, but like in the conventional baseline of like the songs are paced appropriately for a musical. There are numbers, right? It's not just like it's not a Dear Evan Hansen of People's. Obviously, that is actually a musical, but like it's not like a we're singing to the smallest degree we possibly can. Almost even like Cyrano, when we talked about of like it's I'm singing, but to like the lowest degree sometimes. She has full on number, including that one about being born in Idaho that takes 45 minutes of the film. I liked it. It's just, it was like, so I just kept being like, oh, there's more. Oh, wait. Oh, I forgot about this being something we're returning to now. And like, you know, it was a lot to take in. But yeah, I think it definitely is a musical. I do want to talk about, we talked about how amazing the scene is where she's like all dressed up in the freckles and everything. And she's crying about him. Hold on, I'm going to sneeze.
God bless you.
Can we talk about the visuals of that number, though, that she does? Is it referencing a minstrel show in some way?
First of all, why does she look like Liza? I know she is her mother, but oh my God.
Something about styling that really does make you think of Liza.
Yeah.
For sure.
I will not be answering the question that you posed, RJ, as our token POC.
It made me feel real itchy when it started.
Now, which made you feel itchier? This one or when she put the lampshade on her head and did the Chinese dance?
The lampshade was more overtly racist, for sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, like, I know a fair bit about minstrel shows because I took a 19th century theater course, a 19th century American theater course, and that is a lot of minstrelsy.
Honey.
But like, okay, there was like the straw hat and the freckles.
Yeah,
so
what are the elements?
Like,
what are the elements?
There was a very like rural and not intelligent, I feel like, thing being telegraphed.
Yes,
like old clothing kind of thing. And then
it gave me Huck Finn for some reason.
It was giving Huck Finn for sure. And then there were 2 little black children that were like kind of flanking her. There were not any other black characters in the rest of the movie. There's also one other black woman who walks in. And another thing about the visual of the scene is that everyone's in grays except for Judy in red. And then the children are also wearing some red. And then the other red are some cut up watermelons in the back. And the cut up watermelons
I did not
notice that.
I would like,
because there is another black character that appears, but they are...
She's
doing
also
dishes.
in gray.
Yes.
I think she's doing the wash.
Yeah, she's doing the
like
wash.
laundry.
She comes out, she stretches out, and then sees the dancing and walks away. And then everyone else is like a rich white person in like city garb, like dancing.
Right. I mean, like, I think maybe we're at the phase of like minstrel shows are not taboo, but maybe there's been some thought about them where we're not doing a full minstrel number anymore. And I did wonder if this was like progressive at the time, because she like hugs the children and stuff, that I was like, oh, I don't know, like maybe in 54 that would have been kind of a moment of like, oh my gosh, she's like on film, like embracing these children as like, you know, part of her community or whatever. So I don't know how it would have been read at the time, but it felt like maybe they were trying to do something with like the South and black people that's like, we're not going to quite do the thing, but we're going to maybe remind you of a thing, was what I was wondering when I was watching it.
So just remember that this is 1954, also the year that White Christmas came out, a movie that has the song I'd rather see a minstrel show than any other show.
Which I feel like we talked. Didn't we do White Christmas for the pod?
No,
I think we talked about
RJ
it.
and I did this. We have talked about it since in other things, but yes.
Yeah. I mean,
because shockingly, minstrel shows comes up a lot when we talk about Judy Garland. We talked about this in Mimi and St. Louis too.
Yeah. I mean, it comes up a lot with musical theater, to be fair.
Yes,
but
for
I'm always so fascinated by that White Christmas number because they're not doing a minstrel show, but they're singing about missing them. And so it's like, okay, so it was like taboo enough that we're not doing it any, because you could just put a minstrel number in if you wanted, right?
Yeah.
So like, we know not to do that, but we're still singing about how great it was when we could do them. Like, where are we as a culture? I'm confused.
Yeah.
So
it's a weird sequence. I think all the sequences in which she is filming a movie.
Yeah.
I think it's meant to represent like studio, because she does the commercial is kind of like south of the border.
Yeah.
You know, like
with the puppet.
Yes, the like work she's doing is like, we're going to different locales, because at the time, like, those were the films. It's meant to like.
Okay, well, obviously we can get into like, we're past World War II, so all the GIs came home after going abroad, and so they all came back and were like, I've seen places.
Seen it.
Yeah.
So that's how we got like tiki culture in America, was people having been shipped off to the South Pacific and being like, holy shit, rum and drinks, who knew? So it's a little that for sure. I think these numbers though are interesting because we get no context of what these movies are whatsoever. Yeah. And I think it's kind of ingenious, because then you can easily just throw songs in and be like, just write a song and we'll just throw it in this movie, and it doesn't matter at all.
Or if you have a song that hasn't fit in something else, we'll put it in here.
Right.
Yeah.
It truly could not matter less, but you still get to see Judy like be great. Like she's so good in this. And the fact that this Lose That Long Face number bookends probably her most dramatic scene in this film and the song is called Lose That Long Face.
Yes.
Like it's so,
she has to come back
pointed.
and perform like this, like
the close-up.
cheesy number, the close up.
Yes.
After just crying about how much you hate your husband.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a weird song. It is a very visually weird song. But I also think, I mean, there's also definitely, she's like poor. There's like a class element to this as well, because everybody else in the scene is like, has a well-to-do job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's part of it too. Let's listen to a little bit of, what did I say? Let's listen to a little bit of Lose That Long Face.
All this stuff and nonsense you can overcome. A long face gets you nowhere. You lose that month of May. Like Peter Pan, the sweeter Pan wins the day. Go lose that long face, that long face. Go along and get that long face lost. The blues black out when they can see a smile that says move on, no vacancy. This panacea idea I'm handing you without any cost. There isn't any tax on it, so just relax on it. If you want trouble, double cross. Don't give in to a frown. Turn that frown upside down and get yourself that long face lost.
So,
what'd you think?
Any thoughts on that? No, we don't have to do that. There's really not a bunch of songs that I feel like are integral to like talk about.
No, that's true.
I think it probably is good for us to talk a little bit about this Chinese moment that happens in
and then the jungle
stars. They're in the song "It's a New World."
Somewhere she will find him, somewhere where she will find him. Nowhere.
Now I'm gonna surprise you guys. That was not Chinese.
What?
Yeah.
That
Those were just
ling ling noing noing.
That's not Chinese. Isn't that crazy?
Wow. I never.
Are you joking?
I was going to say it almost gets to this point where it's so bad that you can't even be offended by it because it's like you can't take it seriously enough to be offended by it. Do you know what I mean? Like it's quaint 1950s of like, okay, grandpa, like you just go in a corner.
Grandpa,
like,
sure.
you know, like you
Yeah.
can't even begin to deconstruct it because it is so terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Why?
There's a comedian. I'm blanking on their name, but they're like I'm gonna speak Chinese, and then you tell me when you think that the fake Chinese starts playing, and it's like 你好，我是语法音，我现在叮叮当当叮叮noi noi.
I think I maybe seen this clip as well. Yeah.
So you're like, yeah.
I like, okay, apart from that.
Yeah.
And the part where she's like, and then we go to Africa.
Yeah.
Also, we gotta love how it's always just the
always
continent.
Africa. It's one place.
The second largest continent on Earth.
in the earth.
I've had kids try to argue with me before that Africa is a country. And I'm like, it is not. It's just you've never heard of any specific places in Africa before. But I assure you, it is not a country. It is a continent.
It's like 57 countries.
Yeah.
I liked the number because it was a nice break from the sadness we were getting.
Yes,
so
that's
it was
true.
nice to
it's
like
showing
get them.
like the excitement still, because at this point he is like, you know what, I'm gonna get back. There's a lead in a film like in the UK that wants to get me back. I think I'm getting in the spirit again, and I can get back into it. And then she comes home and is like, I'm so excited for this new film. Let me tell you all about it. Yeah, it's still. It's that's what
and he just is still so. This is a 7-minute sequence. I would, if you started doing this, I would absolutely go into the bedroom and shut the door. Like I would not be engaging with this at all.
The entire time I was like, Adam, this is a full bit that like you could do.
I know.
Look, you two can come on here and pretend you're not doing full 7-minute bits for each other in your free time, but no one's gonna believe you. Okay.
Yeah.
7-minute bits. That's just sex. So anyway, no, I was gonna say, but it's like nice that he's like still so enamored with her. Like he loves it.
He thinks
like
it's so fun. He's
so
like, this
fun.
is what I love about
you.
Yeah.
And yes, he loves it. And I was gonna say when we had is it A New World? A New World calls across the ocean. Whatever the song is that she performs for him, and then he has her sing it when he is leaving the house to go drown himself. That I think is the closest to a true number that moves the plot forward, because it has thematic dissonance in that it's about like new beginnings, right?
Yes.
But is ultimately played in a moment of ending. And and I think it's so beautiful to what we've been saying about how much he loves her and supports her and finds joy in her stardom, that the thing that he wants to hear as he shovels off his mortal coil is her singing this song, this celebration of her career.
Yeah.
That's all he wants
That's what
to
she
hear.
won the Oscar for.
That's what she won the Oscar for.
Yes. I want to say one more thing about songs that have thematic kind of whatever, but we should just briefly, the briefest of briefs, touch on Born in a Trunk.
The movie within a movie within
the movie within a movie within a movie. I wasn't mad that it was happening, right? It was filmed well. She does great.
The sets are cool.
The sets are cool. The dress.
Cool.
She wears a gown in this that is so fucking beautiful. I almost cried.
And it's like a minute and a half.
Truly. It is a 15-minute sequence of this film. It is basically the American in Paris ballet.
Yeah.
Okay? It is not nearly as good as the American in Paris ballet. I'm sorry to tell you. I mean, don't
hard
like
to be
saying it.
That level,
Hard
but
to
yeah.
beat. I don't like saying it. We'll listen to, I don't know. Well, that's the end.
because it ends, and then she's like, "Let me tell you what just happened and how we got
And
here."
I'm sure
Yeah.
to you, tribute seemed quite right. But if you knew of all the years of hopes and dreams and tears, you'd know it didn't happen overnight. Overnight. I was born in a trunk in the Princess Theater in Pocatello, Idaho. It was during a matinee on Friday, and they used a makeup towel for my daddy.
My daddy?
I don't know. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Listen, it's just a lot. It's a bit of excess. I'll say that.
Yeah.
It's going to the Cheesecake Factory and being overwhelmed by the menu.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
I agree. There are parts that I really liked. I liked the singing in the rainish, going into Agent's office, like sequence.
Sure.
all
Oh,
that
I
stuff.
loved that. Yeah.
I think what's felt weird is that it was already, if we think about it in terms of its meta function in the story, it's like she's in a film where she's already reflecting on how she became so famous, but she's not yet famous in the movie. Like she is at the beginning of figuring out if she will be famous. So it felt like a weird pacing of like her first movie is about someone who is at the peak of her career. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Okay,
like the
but
first movie
it's
should
her,
be
like,
kind of
debut.
more.
Now I am going to say this.
her
I think
breakout.
we are fully dealing with meta commentary because they're
Yeah.
like, it's Judy. So they're really playing into the like, it's the Judy aspect of like, she's been doing this for so long. This is her
Yeah.
comeback. This is
Yeah.
her time to like show off what she can
Show
do
off.
outside of the walls of MGM.
Yeah.
I think there is a little bit of that. That's like,
It's the like, okay, you're going to put Fred in a movie, so give him like a full, 20-minute dance sequence.
right. You put Gene Kelly in Xanadu. He's got a,
He's
I'm
got
not
a roller
arguing.
skates.
I'm not
He's
arguing
got
with
a
the
roller
length of it. I'm just saying I can't believe I'm going to use 42nd Street as an example of great filmmaking. But like
what other film would you use?
in that movie, it doesn't feel like the part she's playing is that of an established. She's playing an ingenue
Yeah.
in the role that is her breakout role, and it felt like Judy was not playing an ingenue in her first movie in this film.
She's
That was
playing
the part
like
that felt weird.
She's playing like this is an established role already.
But
which I
it's-
mean,
but like
yeah.
I feel like you could give her just as much to do, but in a very ingenue type like that character in the film could be at a different phase of breaking out.
But it's weird because this movie is pointedly not saying that Vicky Lester, thank you, that Vicky Lester is an ingenue. Like it's really not
She's
saying that at all. It's like
powerhouse.
about how she's like so good at her vocals are really like the draw of the whole thing.
But I feel like you started as an ingenue even if your vocals are going to be, I don't know. Do people don't start out in the role of like not even aging actress,
in
but
1954, no one's accepting a 32-year-old ingenue. I hate to tell you, she's practically at death at that point. And how right I was by saying that. Yeah, it just kept going. That's really the big note. And then luckily it does end into the intermission.
Yeah.
So we did make popcorn. So that was great.
I made popcorn earlier in the movie. We both had popcorn.
Well, because he has a line right before they go to the preview where he's like, oh, if the people barely even watch these previews because they're too busy trying to go get popcorn all the time.
And I was like,
and then the whole sequence, I was like, fuck, I want popcorn. And then I hit intermission. I was like, go make popcorn.
Hilarious.
The one song that we have to talk about from this movie that we have not talked about is The Man That Got Away.
Yep.
And I do think there is a bit of a thematic foreshadowing with like what the song is of like what's going to happen in the film.
Right. He does get away.
He gets away right into the water. So this is like 15 minutes into this film, isn't it? It's so early in this movie.
Yeah.
It's like the third scene.
Yeah. And it's like,
and it's just her singing with this band. And it is some of the most riveting movie making I've ever seen in my life. I could not take my eyes off her.
Because it just follows her.
And the song is incredible. It's easily the best song here. Yeah. The song is incredible. She sounds amazing. The band is great. You like fully are James Mason as Norman, just like being like, holy fuck, who is this? Now it is funny because the scene after this, he goes, you have a great voice. Has anybody ever told you that? And she goes, no, nobody's ever told me. I refuse to believe that Esther Blodgett has never been told she has a great voice.
She's pursuing this for some reason. I mean, she's a professional singer. She's not famous, but she is a professional singer.
Correct.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought that was funny. But, we got to listen to a little bit of The Man That Got Away.
The night is bitter, the stars have lost their glitter, the winds grow colder, suddenly you're older, and all because of the man that got away.
So good. I'm so sorry. She's too good.
I forgot that we were recording the podcast. I was just watching that. Sorry.
I know.
It's too good.
Like when people say voices of a generation.
Honestly.
Judy Garland.
The gays have taste. Okay? Let's say it.
And now Jojo Siwa is making gay pop.
And now Molly's closer is definitely going to be who should remake A Star Is Born for the 5th time. And I'm going to say Jojo Siwa.
Oh my
God. So anyway, to wrap up, the last thing I wanted to say is that there is a moment in this film at the very end, toward the end, I guess it's not the very end, where Oliver comes to the house. Norman is sleeping. Oliver comes over. They talk. Oliver and Vicky talk on the patio.
Oliver is like the studio head.
He's the studio head.
Who I will say
has boss. Yeah.
As a studio head, I felt like he was still very caring and sympathetic of Norman, like, and not even in just like we've been through good times and bad times, and I just want to, like, he genuinely cares for him. It's like wants to see him through. Mm-hmm. He visits him in the sanitarium, like he, like he's very close.
Well, the best part of his narrative, his storyline is after the death, when Libby asks if they'll rename the Norman Maine like placard or whatever. And he's like, no. And then he's like, you should have known him when he was at his best, because he was one of the greats. Yeah. It's very sweet.
So sweet.
Norman gets woken up and he hears the conversation in which Vicky says she's going to quit show business so that she can take care of him, so that he can get better and they can live their lives happily together. And
not like met with like, oh, you're crazy. Like
Oliver tries to push a little bit and is like, are you sure?
Yes.
And that's really all he does.
Yeah.
And accepts it pretty quickly. I don't think any studio head in existence would accept it that quickly.
Not.
To be clear.
Your biggest star.
Yeah. But he overhears this. He's in bed. The lighting is such, it's very Renaissance painting. It's coming in from the side. It's chiaroscuro. It's like the shadows and the lighting all matching together. It is one of the most beautiful shots of this movie. And he is stricken with like anguish. Like truly, I don't think I've ever seen anguish expressed in this way on screen before. And he bursts into tears, and you could feel I could feel his heart like shattering in that moment watching the scene. And I didn't know how this movie was going to do. I knew he was going to have to kill himself. I knew that was the point of the film. Not the point of the film, but I knew that was going to happen. And I was curious how it was going to get there. And then when this happened, I was like, wow, and then he comes out after this. He breaks down And then he comes out and he puts on a brave face and is like, I'm going to go. Like, is so sweet to her. He tells her he wants to take.
Are you okay?
He tells her he wants to take another look at her, just like he did like the first time he met her. And then she goes and she's like happily thinking their lives are going to.
Yeah, he's like, why don't you go make me breakfast and leave the door open so you can keep singing.
Yeah, so I can hear you sing. And then he like walks into the ocean. And the way it's filmed is really cool. You see him walk in and then they cut to a shot of the towel that he left behind, or his bathrobe being swept out to sea. And I thought that was a very cool, like metaphoric kind of understanding of what happened. But I just was so impressed by his performance throughout the film, to be clear, but like in that bedroom sequence when he's just overhearing and listening. And that's a thing that movies can do that it's very hard for theater to do, to get that close for that tight of a reaction. Yeah. And it really moved me. So I had to shout it out.
That close of a reaction, and also the split of like he's in a private space, and they don't know that he can hear him, also is really hard to like, you can do it, but like it's always, you have to suspend your disbelief a lot to believe it on stage, but you can really understand it in film.
And the fact that he was just woken up because they like went to put a tissue down and it blew out of his hands into the open window, and like that's what like hit him, like landed on him or whatever, and that's what woke him up. I just it's so, the whole movie is so good, but like there are some really incredible moments that I was like, this is like master film work. Any final thoughts? Anything we haven't touched on? I
don't know if I want to watch the Barbara.
I want to watch the Barbara for sure.
Because I feel like I'm going to leave watching all of them feeling like this one for me was probably like my favorite.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I think this is the first time in a while that I could just like full-throatedly suggest people watch it. Yeah. The stills part is weird. You got to get over the fact there's going to be some parts that are just.
But it's a movie from the 50s. You know, like, they did their best.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would have enjoyed it more if I had known that going into it and wasn't so confused by it. But otherwise, yeah, it's just, for all the critiques we have as a result of it being in the 50s, of the gender stuff and the racial portrayals and all that stuff, it's just a really good movie.
Yeah.
And the story is so strong. I mean, it almost feels like crazy that I can't think of any other rising, falling stories, because it feels like a trope, but the only thing I can think of is like A Star is Born,
where it's like at the cost of someone else.
And there is a Bollywood remake of this film, actually. I think there's 2 Bollywood remakes of this film. So
yeah, I think why people love like classic Hollywood movies where it feels like you are so sucked in the story, like that's what you get from here. Like you really feel like you are in that house with the two of them, knowing like what the struggle that they go through.
And sometimes Hollywood movies, especially in the golden age of Hollywood, they feel, especially films about Hollywood, they feel really self-indulgent, and this does not feel that way. It does feel like there is a bit of a critique of the Hollywood system within it, and like what it actually is like to be like have to deal with fame, and like I think that's why that sequence where the veil gets ripped off her face is so like shit.
It feels like it shows that like there's still people that are kind of running this industry.
Yes, you know, it's very human. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. This is Mrs. Norman Maine.
This movie has a 98% certified fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
Is that the highest?
No, 100% is the highest.
That we've seen.
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to go back and check. It's one of the highest for sure. And not all of them have been certified fresh.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a few original reviews, because what was nice is because this was remade with Gaga and Cukor, a lot of the like running periodicals like re-put out their 1954 version to be like, this is what we said about the original, or the Judy Garland version. So Time said an expert vaudeville performance was to be expected from Judy. To find her a dramatic actress as well is the real surprise, although perhaps it should not be. In such pictures as was Vaz, The Clock, and Meet Me in St. Louis, Judy showed the first flutters of nature that could give and sympathize deeply, even where it could not control. In Star, the control is still unsure, but the confidence of the heart, which shows in the sudden warm going under now, look in the eyes, is impressive. Everything she does is a little overdone, but it is a pleasure to see such things done at all. Everybody's little sister, it would seem, has grown out of her braids and into a tiara. Hollywood Reporter said there is one scene where in clown makeup she tells her producer that she doesn't know whether she loves or hates the man she pities that ranks with the finest screen acting jobs of all time. Mason arouses infinite compassion as he traces the story of the man's disintegration. With both his main characters, Cukor evokes the noblest form of tragic audience reaction, an intense feeling of sympathy, and a sort of divine helplessness over being unable to save them from their all too human weaknesses. And it's hard to see how either player could be better.
Yeah.
And finally, the New York Times says crowds of enthusiasts. Oh, this is one of my favorite. Back when like the reviews would be like, and at the premiere, Miss Garland was greeted by scores of loyal fans.
Which is like the very beginning. There's like a Hollywood Reporter basically who talks to a starlet and then like describes her outfit because it's all in radio.
Yes. And they're, oh my God, it's so funny because she's like, oh, isn't she so humble and sweet? And it seems like the absolute biggest bitch you've ever seen. It's incredible.
A full fox around her hair.
Crowds of enthusiastic I'll do it in the accent. Crowds of enthusiastic onlookers swirled around the Paramount and Victoria theaters. It had a double premiere. That's how big this premiere was. It was premiered in 2 theaters at the same time.
Wow.
Last night to attend and watch the gala activities surrounding the premiere of A Star is Born. Miss Garland made an appearance at the Victoria and later arrived at the Paramount for the showing of the film. The glare of floodlights and popping of flashbulbs provided customary background for the event, which was covered by television cameras, radio broadcasters, Armed Forces Overseas Radio, press and newsreel photographers. The sidewalks in front of the 2 theaters were carpeted in the traditional red velvet, and searchlights sent shafts of light high in the sky over Broadway. The audiences at both theaters were made up to a large extent by notables from many fields. As they arrived, Martin Block, the master of ceremonies, and George Jessel greeted them. Not a review, to be clear. Just utilitarian information of what was going on at the premiere, which I'm a little obsessed with. We need to get back to this energy. Yes. Describing it as the sidewalks in front of the 2 theaters were carpeted in the traditional red velvet. Yeah.
Yeah. And
say that.
King.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want TikTok to just be text so that this is what everything has to be promoted by. It's just a description of events that happened.
I wonder if I told ChatGPT to write something, but in the style of like a journalist from the 1950s, if it would use.
Yes. Do you know what? Speaking of ChatGPT, I opened our summary order document today to check if it was my turn to summarize. And the Gemini summary of the content says this sheet contains a list of favorite movies from 2 people. RJ and Molly. I don't know why. It's literally for listener context. It's literally a list of the movies we're doing and then our names in a repeating pattern so that every 3 it's our job to summarize it. It's very clear that Adam's name is repeated just as often as our names. Yeah. But nope, it's a list of just my and RJ's favorite movies. That's what
it's so funny that it assumes you like these are your favorite movies.
There's nothing to indicate that we like these movies.
There's no reason why you would
just
write.
A list of films. It would be more apt if it was like a list of musicals that.
Oh, do you know what though? I think it's because we have numbers next. So it's a number, a name, and then so it's a ranking of the films rather than just the order of the episodes. Yeah.
Interesting.
That does make sense. This is why we can't trust AI yet, though.
Yeah, it's not smart enough. Letterboxd gave it 3.9 stars. Marsh Boyd, also very not funny, very earnest reviews of this film on Letterboxd, unfortunately. Okay. So I had to search high and low for these.
Judy Garland's death kind of mars the whole thing for jokes.
It does a bit. Marsh Boy gave it 3 stars and said, cannot imagine the back pain Judy Garland must have had for carrying this film for 3 long hours. Ella gave it 4.5 stars and said, Judy Garland not winning an Oscar for what she did here is a crime against humanity. And Cody Derricks gave it 4 stars and said, Judy sells the most devastatingly powerful acting moment of her career while dressed as Huck Finn's lesbian cousin. Astounding.
Amazing.
It's actually, she's dressed as Liza Minnelli dressed as Huck Finn is really what she's dressed as. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna go first.
Okay.
I'm taking it. Sorry to tell you. Judy Garland is the MVP of this film. It is very hard to argue with that logic, but there are other options you could take, but I took the obvious one. Thank you so much. RJ, you can go next.
Thank you.
Since you wrote the summary.
I will be picking James Mason as
Norman Maine.
I think with what we've discussed, he gives such a genuine performance that could easily be played out as that, like, he resented her for being so successful, but like played it with so much love for the other person's stardom rising, that the possibility of that being destroyed is truly like the biggest thing that made him want to like basically stop, you know?
Yeah.
Molly?
I'm going to give it to the screenwriter for the same reason that RJ just articulated. Can you remind me who the screenwriter is?
Moss Hart.
Moss Hart, for having, I think, a forward-thinking view on addiction.
Yeah.
And
totally.
As RJ just said, not making it a film about him resenting her, because that seems like the obvious choice, but the less interesting choice.
Totally.
It's not that there's no, I mean, look, let's say this. It's not that there's no resentment. There's obviously something of that there, but I think that he loves her more than he feels that. And also in some ways is trying to repress that feeling as well. But of course, it's human nature that you would feel some jealousy. The jealousy is the inevitable part, not the resentment. Yeah.
Yeah. Molly, what's your closer?
You recall that I said I wish that we could somehow just remove the gender dynamics of the two. I would like you to pitch 2 actors to appear in these roles to make either a gay or lesbian version of A Star Is Born.
So I can do Jojo Siwa.
You could do Jojo Siwa, but you have to pick a woman to pair with her.
It's funny because like if you do the same, like if you do 2 women, it just kind of becomes like All About Eve, like an All About Eve type of story where it's like, I feel like it does naturally play out to be like jealousy. So it's very interesting to kind of frame it in a love, place of love instead.
Certainly, yes. There also exists a long-standing narrative about women being jealous of each other. So that is a complication.
Never heard of that before, for sure.
I have an answer. It's a little bit lazy because I'm recasting a pair that I like in another film that I'm going to go with it. As the ingenue, I'm putting Miss Emma Stone. As the established older actress,
Rachel Weisz.
Olivia Colman.
I
think same film, different pairing. Maybe we're thinking the favorite.
The favorite, the favorito.
Yes. I think that, and I think what would be fun but difficult to do is that it's about being a comedic actress.
I was just thinking that when you were describing the prompt, I was like, oh, it'd be funny if it was like a comedy, or like vaudeville, you know, like if it was like pure comedy.
Yeah. Oh, I would also love just a modern, so just it's Olivia Colman and Emma Stone making it now, but it's about a couple doing vaudeville in the 20s. I think it would be hard to do a lesbian story and then have it be about like proudly proclaiming how proud you are of your partner if it was a 1920s story, but we'd find a way. We'd find a way to do
Marlene Dietrich.
Yeah. Olivia Colman as Marlene Dietrich.
I'd watch. I'll fund. Go fund me. I think I was thinking about like, could you take this? Obviously, they took it into a musician direction. For
you
the
take it to a different performing art.
Well, I was just thinking another, like, for some reason I was like, what if you had 2 professors in like academia who are women, right? Like, I think that could be interesting. The problem is like, there's part of it that's like the excess of like movie stardom. That's like part of what is makes it so over the top. Why it comes to such an extreme decision. So it's hard to be like, your paper got published. You know, that doesn't feel as... Yeah.
Different tone for sure.
You could do politicians. I think that could be interesting.
Could be cool.
2 openly gay politicians
that are married. They get married. Do you have one?
I could see this being like I could also see this in like fashion world, but maybe like modeling as opposed so it's like supermodels.
Well, because then if you did like ballet, then you get into like Black Swan territory.
Should be really cool. Which I
loved Black Swan. I loved that movie.
Great.
Yeah. So if it was like fashion, then I would cast like. Tough. I'm like, it's hard to cast actresses to play as supermodels versus just saying like a supermodel. So like, so it's like if it was Naomi Campbell and then like a younger, like a newer,
and then Shea Coulee as
and then
I would die.
I would fund it personally, honey.
This one is interesting. I'm trying to think about like,
wait, what if you did like drag? What if it was like a Peppermint and then like a young up and coming like Olivia Lux type? Not even saying like Peppermint is old, but like
I have to confess that I've only watched like 2 episodes of the current season. So
Olivia Lux is not from the current season.
She's not from the current season?
No, she was in the Simone season
12.
Okay.
But like maybe
this
like
is
a
why
Peppermint.
I'm not watching it very much because it's all running together in my head at this point.
It is. Yeah, I think a drag version could be cool too, but it would be cool to do like a seasoned established queen.
I think it's hard to have the sincerity that we see in this version.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Drag performance, but yeah.
I think it does.
Broadway.
I don't care.
I don't care about
it's boring. I think I think it was smart for them to take it to the music industry.
Yes, to take it to music
because it's such a machine that really gobbles people up in a very different way than Hollywood. So I think there is like a bit more. That's like the whole thing about.
It's a more accessible version that people immediately kind of understand right away.
And there's like, I think it
more
is an
swept awayness.
I think there is an element to the Gaga Cooper one that's interesting where it's like about the being truth, like your art is truth, like truth in your art or whatever that you can't really get in acting because acting is inherently like lying. So that being said, I'll keep it easy and I'll keep it within the realm of movies, and I'll do 2 guys. Let me pick. Who are men? Maybe some men.
We need to
George
like
Washington. Or,
I think George Washington and Thomas Jefferson for sure.
You'll have to like
not the pair.
You have to like an older and a younger.
Well, it's weird because James Mason doesn't seem that much. I mean, I guess I didn't look it up. I don't know how old he is when they filmed this movie. He doesn't feel like terribly old. He feels like he's in his 40s.
It doesn't seem like inappropriate, but he does seem like he's significantly
older, more established.
It's a noticeable amount of being older. Okay, he was born in 1909, and Judy Garland was born in 1922. Okay,
so he was in his 50s. Or no, he was 15 years older than her. 13 years older than her. Okay.
Yeah.
So let me pick. Okay. Let me do. I'm trying to think of his name. Phantom Thread.
Oh, Daniel Day-Lewis.
Daniel Day-Lewis. At the tailspin of his career, which is fitting because he said he had retired from acting. So he can do one last role as his goodbye. And then let's do
like a
Taylor Zachar Perez from
Red, White, and Royal
Blue.
Is that the bi one?
That is the bi one. Yeah.
The American.
That's the American.
Not the Prince.
The American. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Wait,
that's a pretty big age gap, but yeah.
Yeah. But it's gay, so it's fine.
But
It's gay, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. In that sense, could I do maybe music, and the ingenue is Renee Rapp? But then the star should be like, I think J-Lo.
And we can finally get her back to acting
Where she belongs.
where she belongs.
Or have you been so traumatized? Because she's really good in Hustlers. She can play these. I think she can play like a complicated, darker role, and I think she would genuinely have an interesting approach to like a star that's like demise is coming.
Look, I love the J-Lo choice, as we've said that we think she should just become an actress, but I do want to say how epic it would be to cast Lady Gaga.
To play the Bradley Cooper role. I know.
Like 10 years later to just play the opposite role in the film.
Honestly, Bradley, if you don't fund that yourself, you should.
Yeah. If you don't fund that yourself, you don't care about women. That's what I want you to know.
The inherent problem with the lesbian one, though, is that it feels like lesbians.
Speak on lesbians.
Yeah, please speak on lesbians.
I would say the cultural understanding of lesbians is that they like talk through their problems. Even whether or not they reach a decision is up in the air. But like, I don't know if it would listen.
I think we've had, especially when it comes to older, younger stories, there's enough predatory. You know, you just put Cate Blanchett in there, and then we're ready for us to believe that she's going after women in a problematic
What if
way.
it's if it's Renee Rapp and Connie Britton?
And it's Country Strong.
And it's Country Strong.
Country
It's Nashville.
It's Nashville. Yeah. Or Gwyneth. What's Gwyneth doing?
No, she's too busy having speed trials.
Pussy crystals. Yeah.
Pussy crystals.
Stop saying that word. I'm begging you to stop saying that word.
Crystals? Okay.
Yeah.
I think Renee is a good choice for that.
Her in anything.
Because she is a star on the rise.
Yeah.
I don't know why they didn't cast her for this movie.
Right.
Oh, for Judy's role?
For Judy's role? I bet they were both up for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was between them. You didn't read that,
shame.
but I read that.
I didn't read who was. Actually, it was funny because it was like
J-Lo, Renee.
It was a long list of people. Madonna.
Oh.
Judy.
Wait, Madonna would actually be really interesting too, but
as the older one. I just don't think
she wouldn't agree to do it, but it would be really interesting. Yeah.
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 Because she is on.
But she would never admit that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, of course not. Wow. Look at that. We just gave a bunch of producers
so many ideas.
12 more
welcome.
stars are born.
Yeah. Stars being born. Supernovas over here. Yeah, that's a jack.
I do think going back to industry specifically.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, I think stand-up comedy would be very interesting.
Oh, it would.
It's very singular.
Yes.
You're on your own.
Yeah.
And when you burn hot, you burn hot.
Like that.
And when
guy.
you fall off a cliff, it would be so awful. Like, instead of doing what if he like heckled, instead of like interrupting the speech, what if he was heckled a set?
Heckled a set.
Well, but I think if he heckles her, whatever gender we're doing, like, I think that is harder to read as a embarrassing blunder for him, and it seems more malicious.
Yeah, totally.
I think
What
it
if
would be
it's
more
not
like
heckling, but he comes wandering in, and then he gets heckled and like
makes it about him, which is essentially the what?
And it has to be. And it has to be about woke comedians. It has to be about woke comedy. That's what. That's why he's like on the decline.
Stop with your right wing thing you're trying to pull this podcast into. No, I was going to say what would be great would be she's getting heckled and he starts to try to like rapid fire in her defense, but then it turns into like now it's not funny anymore. Like he's just being mean.
Yeah.
Because then it's still like his intention is to defend her, but you see how much he's slipped in terms of if he at the beginning is good at handling hecklers, and then we're
you've
seeing
made it
him
a heterosexual story again. I see. Interesting. You don't think homosexual stories can exist? I get it. No, it's fine.
Not in stand-up comedy, girl.
It's true. T. That's where you're going to get two lesbians.
I feel erased now in this conversation.
The erasure.
It would be fun to do like a fortune feaster.
And name another. Jessica Kirkson.
Fortune Feimster and Mae Martin. They currently do a
Mary
podcast.
Martin from Broadway.
Mae Martin. Mae Martin is a non-binary Canadian.
I don't know Mae Martin.
the one who's dating Parvati.
What about Tig?
Tig is also on the podcast. Those three are doing podcasts
Those are
together.
the three on the podcast.
Yeah.
But May is dating Parvati from Survivor or Traders.
Oh, that
I don't know about Survivor, but yeah. May has a really good show called Feel Good on Netflix that I would definitely recommend. There's a scene where May and their girlfriend try to do role play, but keep like bringing down the mood, and it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
Tig and May could be a fun A24 version of A Star Is Born.
That would be an intense version, I feel like. Yeah.
I just think like you could also put it in a time and place by having it be like he's the whoever the older one is, the one on the decline.
Yeah.
Is like it's because of the alcoholism, which I think is like pretty like abuse of like alcohol is pretty common for like comics because like you're on the road all the time. It's a bar. But that's A, but then B, he thinks he or they, she, he, they, whatever. They think it's about them like that, like the culture's too woke now, so their comedy isn't good, but it's like not about that. But like it can also do that.
I think that would be like really grating to see somebody grapple with thinking people are too woke. Personally, I'm already sick of the notion before even watching the movie.
And Adam's just getting started.
I'm just getting started.
To say about it. Okay.
Here we go. No, it's fine. I just think it's interesting because that's the only conversation about comedy right now. It's just like every fucking established comedian is like, can't make jokes anymore.
Yeah, it couldn't
be that call trans person the T word. So
it couldn't just be that maybe people's taste in comedy change over time, and you can't stay at the top forever. So I think you're right that like realistically that would be, but like I don't want the movie to be exploring that in depth. I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah,
I'm not interested.
It's happening in real time right now, and it's exhausting.
Yeah.
Great.
Hannah Gadsby. That's another.
Oh, Hannah Gadsby, Mae Martin. That feels like it has a lot more quirky potential. I feel like Tig is going to make it very sincere and like dramatic.
Yes.
I feel like Gadsby and May, that's going to be like a quirky little fun time.
Sure.
And then suicide.
And A Star Is Born is nothing but fun when you really think about it. Yeah.
I want moments of levity as we praise this film for having. That's all I'm saying. Just want my little moments.
Great.
Thanks.
Well, this was fun.
It's nice to see you too.
It's nice to see you. As well.
I'm sorry I forgot to watch the movie earlier this week.
Oh no, she didn't. To be clear, listeners, Molly didn't watch this movie at all. This was all.
She was watching the movie this entire time, actually. So she.
Yeah, I just had it on in the background, and I was like, "Why are there photographs?" And I was just figuring it out as we went along.
I watched it on 3 times speed earlier today. So it was only 1 hour. Okay, well, thank you for listening. As always, please write us an email.
Please.
You don't even have to write us a review. You don't have to rate us. You don't have to review us. We just want you to send us an email and be like, Judy Garland is one of the greatest national treasures of all time.
Yeah. Right. Just write us that verbatim. We're trying to we're doing a podcast theory where we're deepening the audience we have instead of expanding it in any way. We want you to not promote us. We just want you to send us an email.
We're just friends. We just want to be friends with you.
We're friends with you. We're in our 30s and it's hard to make friends.
Well, Molly, you said you were going to sing.
I was hoping you would forget that.
Well, guess what? You playing last episode didn't get you out of it, honey.
Oh, no. Oh, do you know what? I have to go now. I'm so sorry.
The phone is crackling.
Oh, whoops. I think we're going through a tunnel.
Going through a tunnel.
Molly's watching the film and going through a tunnel while she records. Thank you for listening to the best revival of a podcast, Showgays. You can find us on social media. Adam is at Adam Noecker on Twitter. RJ is at RJ Food Rocks on Instagram. And Molly is at Molly Matiny on Instagram. This episode was edited and mixed by Adam Noecker. This has been an Ampliverse production. You can find our show page and more information at theampliverse.com. If you'd like to send us your own takes on the movie we just watched, reach out to us via email and we might read it aloud on the show. Our email is showgaysmoviemusical@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to help others find the show. And now, as always, the show must go on, so stick around to hear what we're going to be watching next episode.
It's the musical extravaganza that launches the 80s. It's Alan Carr's Can't Stop the Music.
You can't stop the music.
Once you see it, you'll know why you can't stop the glamour.
Do the shake, do the shake, do the shake, do the shake, do the milkshake, do the shake, 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 do the milkshake, the milkshake.
You can't stop the excitement.
Understand the YMCA. Understand the YMCA. They have everything for you men to enjoy. You can hang out with all.
You can't stop the dancing. You can't stop the laughter.
Magic night, magic's in the music, it's a magic night. We all need to use it, we can have a good time and enjoy all the magical vibes on this magic night. With friends all around you, it's a magic night. Magic
But
show.
most of all, you can't stop the music.
You can't stop the music.
Can't stop the
Nobody
music.
can
Starring
stop
Village
the
People.
music. Take the heat from flame, try not feel.
Valerie Perrin.
Though you try in vain, it's what she's beyond. No,
Bruce
you
Jenner.
can't stop the music. Nobody can stop
Steve
the
Guttenberg.
music. Change the master plan. Take the
Paul Sam.
man, 'cause that's easier to
Co-starring
do.
Tammy Grimes. June Havoc.
Radio, on
Barbara
every
Rush.
show.
Altovise Davis. Marilyn Sokol. And a special appearance by the Ritchie family. Once it begins, you can't stop the music.
Tell the sun to shine, stop them all the time, 'cause that's easier to do. You can't stop the music.
The new musical sounds of the 80s are composed and produced by Chuck Corelli.
Take the cold and snow, tell the trees
An EMI
don't blow,
film.
tell the wind don't blow, 'cause it's easier. No, you can't stop the music.
Discovering voices, building worlds, the Ampliverse.